You're not going there. Ever. Those were the last sharp words Daniel said to me about that farm, and the way he slammed the drawer shut that night still echoes in my head. It's strange how a sound you didn't think twice about at the time can suddenly feel like a warning you should have listened to. Or maybe one I should have questioned sooner. My name is Elena Hawthorne, and at 54 years old, I thought I understood my husband better than anyone. I thought I could read him, interpret every sigh, every quiet glance, every small habit that made up the man I spent 30 years with. I thought if there was anything in this world I could trust, it was the rhythm we built together. I was wrong. I remember the morning everything shifted. The kettle was whistling, the same old chipped blue one Daniel insisted we keep because things with history deserve a home. The sunlight hit the kitchen tiles in that warm, honeyed way that usually made me feel grateful for the quiet life we had, our little house in Calgary, our predictable routines. But that morning, the air felt different. Heavy. Like the world was holding its breath for me. When the phone rang, I didn't think much of it. Maybe Daniel forgot his lunch again. Maybe he needed me to check the mail. Instead, a stranger's voice told me my husband had collapsed in the parking lot of his office. A heart attack. Too sudden. Too fast. No goodbye. If you're still here, welcome to Voice of Jenna, a place where stories aren't just told, they're felt. Here, we dive into real emotions, family drama, quiet heartbreaks, unexpected twists, and the moments that change us. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you what happened next. Grief is a strange creature. It sits in your chest like a stone, dull and unmoving, but somehow it still throbs. Those first days after Daniel died, I walked around the house like a ghost in my own home. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates out at dinner. I'd hear footsteps and swear he was coming down the stairs. I missed the way he always hummed when he made coffee. I missed the way he held my hand when we crossed the street, no matter how old we got. I missed the safety of the life we built. But even in the middle of all that heartbreak, there was something else creeping in, an unease I couldn't name. People showed up with casseroles and hugs and stories about Daniel that made me cry into dish towels. Mariah, our daughter, flew home the same night she heard the news. She looked so much like him. Same sharp jaw, same quiet eyes, that sometimes talking to her felt like staring into a memory. She tried to keep me busy, sorting papers, answering condolence messages, choosing flowers for a funeral I could barely comprehend we were planning. But every time I opened one of Daniel's drawers or lifted a stack of his old documents, I felt like I was touching parts of him I wasn't supposed to see. A few days after the funeral, when the house had gone silent and all the embraces had faded into memory, the doorbell rang. I expected a neighbor. Instead, a courier handed me a small envelope with Daniel's handwriting on it. My stomach dropped. He'd dated it 2 months before his death. Inside was a short, strangely formal letter. Just one line, "Elena, when the time comes, go to Maple Creek Farm." My breath caught. Maple Creek Farm. The place he warned me about, the place he insisted we never visit. The place that, in 30 years of marriage, he refused to explain beyond. "Elena, it's not somewhere you need to be." All these years, I thought the farm was just a piece of his troubled childhood, something painful enough he didn't want to reopen. Daniel rarely talked about his family. He said they were complicated, which, from what little I saw of them, was an understatement. His brothers, Marcus and Stephen, had always felt like men shaped by bitterness, sharp edges, quiet resentments. They weren't close to Daniel. They didn't try to be. They missed the wedding, didn't call when Mariah was born, and only sent stiff, emotionless messages during holidays. I assumed Daniel cut them off for good reason. I never pushed him. I thought respect was love. Maybe silence was hiding. Holding that letter, I felt a cold wave rise through me. Why would he send me to a place he spent his entire life avoiding? Why now? Why in secret? And if he meant for me to go someday, why hadn't he told me himself? My hands shook as I turned the envelope over and over, as if a second message might fall out. But there was nothing else. Just that one line and his name. His handwriting looked rushed, uneven, like he was afraid someone else might see it. Later that night, I sat on the edge of our bed, running my fingertips over his pillow. I didn't sleep.
Couldn't.
My mind replayed every moment I might have missed, his shortness of breath last month, the way he rubbed his chest when he thought I wasn't looking, the long nights he spent in his study, with the door closed. He'd grown quieter the past year, more distracted. I kept blaming work stress.
Age. Life.
But maybe he'd been carrying something far heavier, and I just didn't see it. I tried picturing him writing that letter. What he must have felt. What he wanted me to find. The thought scared me. Not because of the farm or whatever secrets it held, but because I realized how much I didn't know. Daniel, the man who held my whole world together, had lived with shadows he never let me touch. The next morning, Mariah sat with me at the kitchen table as I showed her the letter. Her expression tightened. "Mom, why would Dad send you there? He always said that place was trouble." She didn't remember much of the Harrow brothers, but she remembered their cold stares at Daniel's mother's funeral. She remembered the tension in the air, the way Daniel held her hand just a little tighter whenever they were near. "Maybe we shouldn't go," she whispered. But that was the moment something shifted inside me. The grief was still there, heavy as ever, but beneath it, a spark lit up. I'd spent my whole life depending on Daniel to lead, to decide, to protect. And he did. But now he was gone, and he'd left me one final direction, one he must have believed mattered enough to break his own rules. I owed it to him to listen. And I owed it to myself to finally understand. I stood up slowly and took a deep breath. "I'm going," I said, more to myself than to Mariah. "Whatever Daniel wanted me to find, I need to see it." She didn't argue. Maybe she saw the determination in my voice. Maybe she was too tired to fight. Or maybe she understood this wasn't about a farm. This was about truth. As I packed Daniel's letter into my purse, I noticed something I had overlooked before, a faint indentation on the back of the envelope, as if something had once been clipped to it. A paper?
A key?
A photograph? Whatever it was gone now. And that missing piece felt like the first real sign that this journey would be nothing like I expected. I didn't know it then, but Maple Creek Farm would unravel everything I thought I knew about my husband, his past, and the life he tried so desperately to shield me from. And standing there in my quiet kitchen, staring at that envelope with my heart pounding, I felt the first tremor of the conflict waiting for me at the end of the road. The promise I never understood was about to become the truth I could no longer run from. "Who gave you permission to be here?" The voice cut through the cold morning air like a blade before I even had a chance to take a full step onto the gravel driveway. I froze, my hand still on the car door, my breath fogging in the crisp Alberta wind. A man stood near the barn, tall, broad-shouldered, and staring at me as if I'd trespassed on holy ground. For a moment, I swore I was looking at Daniel, but then the recognition hit me like a punch. Marcus Harrow, his older brother. The one Daniel never spoke about without tightening his jaw. Hearing his voice before even seeing the farmhouse felt like stepping directly into the storm I'd spent decades avoiding. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice not to shake. "I'm Elena," I said quietly. "Daniel's wife." The words tasted strange in my mouth.
Wife.
Widow. My identity was shifting faster than I could keep up with. Marcus didn't soften. His eyes flicked to my car, then back to me. "He's gone," Marcus said simply, as if reminding himself, not me. Then he stepped closer, stopping only a few feet away. "So, what are you doing here?" A cold breeze swept through the open field behind us, carrying the scent of dry grass, diesel fuel, and something older, earthier. The farm. Maple Creek. The place Daniel always told me to stay far away from. And yet here I was, standing in the shadow of a barn that looked both abandoned and stubbornly alive. The boards were weathered, but the locks were new. Someone still cared enough to keep this place closed tight. "I need to see the house," I said, lifting my chin. "Daniel asked me to come." It was the truth, and yet Marcus still stared at me like I was lying. Or worse, like I'd come to claim something that didn't belong to me. Before he could respond, another voice echoed from inside the barn. "Marcus? Who are you yelling at now?" The second man appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on an old rag. Stephen, the younger brother. His resemblance to Daniel twisted something sharp in my chest. He had the same dark hair, though streaked with gray now, and the same eyes. But where Daniel's gaze was warm, Stephen's felt calculating. The type of gaze that assessed the value of everyone and everything in the room. When he noticed me, his eyebrows lifted in surprise, and then in something else, recognition mixed with caution. "Elena Hawthorne," he said slowly. "Well, that's unexpected." I hated how both brothers said my name like it tasted bitter. They didn't invite me inside. Instead, they stood there in front of the barn like two guards blocking a gate. The tension was so thick, I could feel it pressing against my lungs. My fingers tingled, and for a moment, I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake coming alone. "I just want to see the farmhouse," I repeated softly. "That's all." Marcus scoffed. "It's just an old house. Nothing for you there." A sharp sting hit my chest. They didn't know about Daniel's letter. They didn't know he had sent me here. Or maybe they did, and that was exactly why they didn't want me going inside. My instinct whispered something quieter, darker. These men weren't just grieving brothers. They were hiding something. I pulled my coat tighter around me, ignoring the tremble under my skin. "I'm going," I said, stepping forward. "Whether you like it or not." For a moment, Marcus's jaw tightened, and I braced myself for another argument. But Stephen raised a hand, stopping him. "Let her," he said. "The house isn't going to clean itself." The words carried something other than sarcasm. Permission? Warning? I couldn't read him, and that made me even more uneasy. As I walked past them, I felt their eyes on my back, watching, measuring, waiting. The rising panic in my chest made my hands sweat inside my gloves. But beneath the fear was something else too, a flicker of resolve I didn't expect. I wasn't turning back. The farmhouse stood a short walk from the barn, its white paint peeling around the windows, the porch bending slightly inward as if bowing from years of neglect. But the closer I got, the more I noticed the faint signs of someone trying to revive it. Fresh nails along the porch railing, a repaired shutter, a recently replaced lock on the front door. Someone had been preparing this place. For whom? I pushed the door open slowly. The hinges creaked, sending a shiver down my spine. Inside, the air smelled like dust, pine, and something faintly familiar, like Daniel's old workshop. I stepped into the living room. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting long, soft beams across the floor. The furniture was old but well cared for. A couch with faded fabric. A coffee table. A fireplace Daniel never told me about. My fingers brushed the surface of a bookshelf, gathering dust. And then, something unexpected. A framed photo. My throat tightened when I saw it. Daniel as a boy, standing between Marcus and Stephen. His smile was wide, full of innocence I'd never seen in any adult picture of him. They looked like brothers then. Real brothers. What had happened to them? "Elena?" a voice said from behind me. I spun around, startled. It wasn't one of the brothers. It was a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, soft brown eyes, worn boots. He held a toolbox in one hand and a surprised expression on his face. "I'm Carter Doyle," he said gently. "Daniel's friend. I helped out around here." My heart clenched. A friend. Someone who might actually know the truth. "Did Daniel talk about me?" I asked before I could stop myself. Carter's expression softened. Every time he came here, he set the toolbox down and wiped his palms on his jeans. He wanted this place to feel like a second life for him, a place he could build from scratch, away from everything else. Everything else. The phrase landed heavily between us. "Carter," I whispered, "why did he never want me to come here?" His eyes shifted toward the window where, outside, Marcus and Stephen stood talking in low tones. Then he leaned closer to me. Because he knew they wouldn't like it. My stomach dropped. "Why?" Carter hesitated, then shook his head. "Not my place to say. But Elena," his voice lowered, "Daniel left things here for you. Things he wanted you to find." Before I could ask what he meant, Carter stepped back when the sound of footsteps echoed on the porch. Marcus and Stephen were coming closer. Carter's eyes flicked toward the stairs, subtle but clear. "When you're ready," he whispered, "check the room at the end of the hall." He slipped away before the brothers entered the house. I turned toward Marcus and Stephen, my pulse racing. "You shouldn't get too comfortable," Marcus said. "This place is complicated." "Yes," I replied quietly. "I'm beginning to see that." But what I didn't tell them, what I barely understood myself, was that the house didn't feel threatening. It felt full, like someone had left breadcrumbs of their life for me to discover. And Carter's warning echoed in my mind. Something was hidden here. Something Daniel wanted me to find. And I wasn't leaving without it. Marcus slammed his palm against the doorframe so hard the picture frames rattled on the wall, and for the first time since arriving at Maple Creek Farm, I felt a jolt of fear sprint up my spine. "Enough sneaking around," he growled. "You need to understand something, Elena. This place isn't yours." His voice filled the narrow hallway, thick and heavy, as if the house itself was bracing against him. Stephen stood a few steps behind, quieter but no less dangerous. His silence felt like a shadow, present, watchful, waiting for the right moment to strike. I steadied myself. "The farm is in Daniel's will," I said, my voice barely above a whisper but steady enough to surprise even me. "Legally. Legally doesn't matter here," Marcus snapped before I could finish. "This isn't about a piece of paper. It's about blood." My heart clenched at the word.
Blood.
As if I hadn't spent 3 decades building a life with Daniel. As if my devotion, my marriage, my grief, all of it, could be dismissed with a single breath. Stephen stepped forward then, rubbing the side of his jaw thoughtfully. "Marcus," he murmured, "let's not start this way." But his tone wasn't comforting.
It was calculating.
He looked at me the way a banker might look at a loan application, coldly, weighing numbers I didn't know existed. "We're all hurting," he said softly. "Daniel's gone. And now you show up here." "I didn't just show up," I said quietly. "He sent me." The air tightened. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Stephen's posture stiffened, just slightly, small details, but enough to tell me the letter had hit a nerve. For the first time, I realized they weren't just angry. They were scared. Of what? Of me? Of what Daniel might have left behind. I drew a breath, trying to calm the storm brewing inside my chest. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to understand what Daniel wanted me to see." Marcus scoffed. "He never wanted you here. He sent me a letter," I repeated. "His handwriting. His words." Marcus's face twisted. Stephen's jaw flexed. The hallway suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in like the house was listening to every breath. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, making the glass tremble, a perfect mirror of the tremor inside my ribs. Stephen's voice dropped, quiet and almost pitying. "Elena, you're grieving. You're not thinking straight. This farm isn't what you imagine." "What do you think I imagine?" "That it's some sentimental legacy." He motioned loosely toward the living room. "A place Daniel cherished. Something romantic." But it wasn't.
Not to him.
"And it shouldn't be to you." His words were calm, almost gentle, but they sank into me like stones. The casual cruelty. The deliberate attempt to twist Daniel's memory. It was subtle, but unmistakable. These men weren't mourning their brother. They were protecting something. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You shouldn't stay here tonight." "Why?" "Because you're alone," he said. "And this place, it has a way of turning outsiders around." The message was clear: leave.
Now.
But instead of shrinking, something inside me hardened. A quiet, stubborn flame I didn't know I still possessed. "I'll be fine," I said. "I'm staying." Marcus inhaled slowly, nostrils flaring. Stephen placed a hand on his arm, a silent signal. Without another word, the brothers stepped back, exchanged a heavy look, and walked out of the house. The door slammed behind them, and the house shook with their exit. I didn't breathe until the sound of their truck faded down the road. Silence filled the air again, thick and buzzing, like the house itself had exhaled in relief. I leaned against the wall, pressing a hand to my chest. God, Daniel, I whispered. What did you leave me with? There was no answer, just the soft groan of the floor settling beneath my feet. When I finally pushed myself away from the wall, I saw the hallway with new eyes. The shadows seemed deeper. The silence seemed louder. And the door at the end of the hall, the one Carter had pointed to earlier, felt like it was waiting for me. My pulse quickened as I approached it. The wooden floor creaked softly beneath each step, and the air cooled the closer I got. There was nothing obviously strange about the door. Just old wood, chipped paint, and a tarnished brass knob. But the weight behind it, emotional or otherwise, felt undeniable. I turned the knob. The room inside was small and dim, lit only by the thin strip of afternoon sun leaking through the dusty blinds. It looked like a space someone had meant to finish but never did. Bare floor, a single wooden dresser, a chair in the corner, and on the desk in the center of the room, a laptop.
Closed.
Waiting. My breath hitched. This wasn't accidental. Nothing about this was accidental. When I lifted the lid, the screen flickered to life, revealing Daniel's old login photo, him sitting on our porch steps, smiling at me. My throat tightened violently. He looked so alive, so unaware of how soon I'd be seeing that smile only in pictures. The laptop didn't ask for a password. It opened straight to a folder on the desktop labeled for Elena. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. Inside were video files. Dozens of them, all dated within the last year. Some from weeks before his death. I pressed play. Daniel appeared on the screen, sitting right here in this small room. His face was thinner, his eyes tired, but his voice still carried that softness I'd loved for 30 years. Elena, he said, rubbing the back of his neck like he always did when he was nervous. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it through what I hoped I would. The room spun. I sank onto the chair, clutching the edge of the desk to steady myself. I'm sorry, Daniel whispered. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. But I had to protect you. And I had to protect what this place really is. His eyes lifted to the camera then, filled with something heavy. Fear, regret, love, all braided together. Marcus and Stephen aren't who you think they are. My breath caught. And what they want from this farm isn't something I could let them have. A storm of emotions erupted inside me. Grief, anger, confusion, heartbreak. The house felt like it was holding its breath again, waiting to see what I would do with the truth placed in front of me like a ticking bomb. I paused the video and closed my eyes, my heart pounding. The conflict was no longer subtle. It was here, sitting directly in my lap. Whatever Daniel had been hiding, whatever the Harrow brothers were trying to keep buried, had just stepped into the light. And suddenly, I understood one thing with terrifying clarity. My life had already been disrupted. But this was only the beginning. I barely slept the night after hearing that voice, his voice, calling my name from somewhere inside the house. The sound replayed in my head endlessly, twisting itself into something more sinister each time. When morning finally arrived, it felt like light was dragging itself across the floors, reluctant to enter a place that suddenly felt wrong. I moved through the house with the carefulness of a guest, not its owner. Every familiar creak carried a new weight. Every shadow seemed stretched too long. Even the cold tile under my feet felt unfamiliar, like the house was subtly shifting under me. Maya arrived before I'd even finished my first cup of tea. She didn't wait to be invited in. She pushed the door open and scanned my face with the kind of concern only she could pull off without sounding dramatic. "You look awful," she said softly, brushing a warm hand against my forehead. Her touch grounded me for a moment, but the words that wanted to spill from my mouth felt tangled. I didn't know how to explain the sound I'd heard, the icy certainty that it wasn't imagination. Not when fear made my thoughts feel unreliable. "I'm just tired," I lied, but my voice cracked. Maya's eyes narrowed, not buying it for a second. "Is it about Adrian?" she asked carefully, as though saying his name might break something fragile in the air. My grip tightened on my cup. I didn't answer, but the silence did it for me. Maya sat down across from me. "You're starting to scare me."
Please talk to me. I wanted to.
I wanted to spill every fear, every strange detail, every shadow that seemed to creep closer when I wasn't looking. But some part of me felt it was safer to keep it inside. Safer for who, though? For me or for her? Instead, I deflected. Have you heard anything more about the man who came asking about Adrian's files? She hesitated before answering, and that tiny pause sliced straight through my chest. A bit, she admitted. Apparently, he's not registered at any private firm here. Nobody seems to know who he is. That should have been impossible. People like him always had some kind of trace, a digital footprint, a company, an address, anything. But he was a ghost. A shadow with a badge. Do you think he could be connected to Adrian? My voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know, she said. But whatever's happening, it's not random. And you're in the middle of it. Her words settled heavily between us. I felt it too, the sense that the walls around my life were closing in, and I didn't even know which direction the danger was coming from. Something was unraveling, and all I could do was brace myself. By afternoon, I tried focusing on work, burying myself in files and reports. But nothing stuck. Even the soft tapping of the keyboard made me flinch. Every sound felt magnified, the hum of the refrigerator, the whistle of the kettle, the distant barking of dogs. And beneath all of it, like a thread woven through the noise, was a faint memory of that whisper, Elena. My phone buzzed, tearing through my thoughts. A message popped up from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. That was it. No name. No context. Just a command that chilled me to my bones. My hands shook as I set the phone down. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. Someone was watching, following, listening. And the moment I tried to dig deeper, they slapped my hand away like a scolding parent. I didn't know what scared me more, the threat or the certainty that it was directed at me specifically. I forwarded the message to Maya, adding only, "We need to talk tonight." When she arrived that evening, her expression was sharper, her worry replaced with something like determination. She locked the door behind her, double-checking it in a way that wasn't subtle. "Okay," she said, standing right in front of me. "We need to figure out what you want to do next." I didn't know. I wanted answers, but I also wanted the nightmare to stop. "I feel like I'm watching my own life from the outside," I said. "Like I'm walking around in a story I didn't agree to be part of." "That's exactly why you need to stop pretending this is just grief or paranoia," she said, lowering her voice. "If someone's threatening you, we go to the police." I almost laughed. "And tell them what? That my dead husband's research files are missing, that a strange man came looking for them, that I heard someone in my empty house last night, and now I'm getting threats? They'll think I'm delusional." "Not if we give them something real," Maya said. "We just need one solid piece of evidence." But everything felt like smoke slipping through my fingers. No solid edges, no obvious enemy, just a growing storm. A sudden crack echoed from the back of the house. We both froze. It sounded like something heavy had fallen, or someone had bumped into furniture. Maya grabbed my wrist instinctively, pulling me behind her as she moved cautiously toward the hallway. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The air felt thick, dense, heavy with the weight of something unseen. Maya turned the corner and let out a breath of relief. "It's just the curtain rod," she said. It fell. But when I stepped closer, I felt that same cold sensation from the night before, that prickling along my skin, that sense of being watched, of something brushing past me without touching me. "No," I said quietly. "Someone was here." Maya didn't argue. The look on her face said she felt it too, even if she didn't want to admit it. Later that night, after she left, I walked slowly through my house. Every door, every window, every shadow. Something was different. Something had shifted. Not physically, emotionally, atmospherically. Like the house was holding its breath. In my bedroom, I found it. One of Adrian's old notebooks, the one I kept locked away in a drawer, was sitting on my bed. Open. Face down. As if someone had just set it there a moment before. A tremor ran through me so deep I had to sit down. The pages were slightly crumpled, as though someone had turned them quickly. And on the page it was open to, Adrian had written a single line months before his death. If anything happens to me, don't trust anyone. Not even the ones closest to you. My breath hitched. The words didn't feel like a warning anymore. They felt like a countdown. For the rest of the night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at Adrian's notebook as if it might rearrange itself into answers. The sentence he wrote, "Don't trust anyone," kept repeating in my mind like a mantra I didn't want but couldn't escape. I tried to convince myself that I had simply misplaced the notebook, that the open pages were my own doing during some forgetful moment. But the drawer I kept it in had been locked. And the lock wasn't broken, not even scratched. Whoever touched it knew exactly what they were doing. I barely felt the morning sunlight bleeding through the curtains. I moved like someone half awake, half trapped in a nightmare. As I made coffee, my phone buzzed. Maya again. Can I come over? It's important. Her messages always had urgency now. I typed back a simple yes. She arrived 20 minutes later, her hair pulled back and her eyes tired in a way that wasn't just lack of sleep. I did some digging, she said, skipping any greeting. About the man who visited you. The one asking for Adrian's files. I braced myself. And someone at the station flagged something. His badge number is connected to an agency that doesn't officially exist. She lowered her voice. They call it a special unit, but nobody knows what it actually does. A chill tightened around my spine. So, he's not a detective. He's something else, she said. And whatever Adrian was involved in, someone doesn't want you near it. Her words hit like a punch. Subplots of my life, loyalty, friendship, fear, began twisting into something sharper, darker. I didn't tell you everything, she added hesitantly. There's something else. Something about Adrian. My breath caught. What about him? Maya looked away, biting her lip before speaking. Someone at work mentioned he wasn't just researching biochemical patterns like he told everyone. There were encrypted files on his server. Files he didn't want anyone to see. My chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I wanted to be sure, she said. And because I didn't want to add to your grief if it turned out to be nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Every new detail made the world tilt a little more. Before I could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. Not urgent. Not threatening. Precise. Controlled. Maya and I exchanged a startled glance. I moved toward the living room cautiously, while she remained close behind. When I opened the door, Tom stood on the porch, my neighbor, the one who lived 2 houses down, known mostly for gardening and complaining about parking spaces. He held a small cardboard box in his hands. "Morning," he said, smiling awkwardly. This was delivered to my place by mistake. He extended the box toward me, but his eyes flicked behind me, scanning the house with a curiosity that made my skin crawl. "What's inside?" I asked, not moving to take it yet. "No idea, but it's got your name on it." He forced a laugh. Didn't want to open it. Too afraid it might be something embarrassing, you know? Like those subscription things. I managed a stiff smile, trying to steady my nerves. "Thanks, Tom." He nodded and began to walk away, but halfway down the steps he paused. "Hey, there were some men around here yesterday. Black SUV. Parked near your driveway." My heart lurched. "Did you see their faces?"
No, he said.
But they weren't delivery guys. They kept checking the street like they were waiting for something. His expression softened with a hint of worry. "Just be careful, all right?" I watched him disappear down the sidewalk, his simple presence suddenly tangled in the web forming around me. Was he being helpful? Or was his appearance timed too conveniently? Adrian's warning echoed louder. "Don't trust anyone." Maya nudged the door shut, her eyes dropping to the box. "You need to open it." My fingers trembled as I tore through the tape. Inside was a single USB drive wrapped in bubble wrap. And a note. No signature. No explanation. Just 2 words. "For your safety." My stomach dropped. "What is this?" I whispered. "Plug it in," Maya said, already pulling her laptop from her bag. "Let's see what's on it." Everything in me screamed not to, but the louder voice inside, the one that needed answers, that craved the truth, won. Maya inserted the USB carefully, as if it might explode. The device loaded a single folder titled with a date 3 days before Adrian's death. She clicked it open. A video file appeared. My throat tightened. My palms sweated. "Are you ready?" she asked gently.
No.
But I nodded anyway. The video opened to a dimly lit office. Adrian's office. He sat at his desk, leaning forward, eyes exhausted, hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. His hands trembled as he pressed record. "Elena," he said, voice shaky. "If you're watching this, things have gone wrong. Worse than I imagined." My heart nearly stopped. "I've uncovered something dangerous," he continued. "Something they will kill to keep hidden. You must listen carefully," and the screen glitched violently. A burst of static replaced his voice. When the frame returned, Adrian wasn't sitting anymore. He was standing, panic etched into his face. "They're coming," he whispered. "Take the notebook. Find the key I hid." The video cut off.
Just like that.
Maya slammed the laptop shut, as if something might crawl out of it. "That's it," she breathed. "That's all of it?" I stared at her, my pulse pounding so loudly I could barely think. "The key," I whispered. "He said he hid a key." Her eyes widened. "A key to what?" "I don't know," I said. "But whatever it unlocks, it's what they want. And now they know I'm looking." The room seemed to shrink around us, thick with attention, so heavy it felt alive. Every subplot, Adrian's research, the strange men, Tom's warning, the anonymous message, the voice in my house, began intertwining into something bigger than I ever imagined. Maya reached out and squeezed my hand. "We need to find that key before they do." And for the first time, beneath the fear, beneath the confusion, beneath the ache of loss, something else stirred in me. Determination. If Adrian had left a trail, I would follow it, whatever it cost. Because the answer wasn't out there somewhere. It was already inside my house. Inside my past. Inside the secrets he left behind. And now I had no choice but to uncover all of them. The first thing I noticed was the door. My bedroom door. Wide open. The lock gone. The safe, the one Adrian had told me to keep closed until the time was right, yanked from the wall. My chest slammed tight, and I felt my stomach drop so hard I thought it might punch straight through my ribs. I hadn't heard anything, hadn't sensed anyone entering. How was that possible? Every creak, every whisper of the house had become a warning to me, an alarm I thought I could rely on. But now nothing. Silence. And then the cold awareness hit me. I had failed. Marcus. I didn't whisper. I didn't even speak aloud. I breathed it like a prayer and a curse at the same time. But it wasn't Marcus I heard first. It was Stephen's slow, deliberate voice from the hallway, tauntingly calm. "You left it too easy," he said. "We told you it was dangerous to be here alone." I spun around. He was leaning against the doorframe, a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Marcus was behind him, dark eyes piercing, expression unreadable. Both of them looked more alive than I'd ever seen them. Not grief, not fear, control. I took a shaky step back, trying to push down the sudden wave of panic. "Why?" My voice cracked like glass. "Why would you do this?" Stephen shrugged as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Because some things aren't meant to be yours, Elena. Not even when someone tries to leave them for you." Every word felt like a hammer, striking repeatedly against my chest. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw something. But even as anger flared, I felt a creeping realization that this wasn't a bluff. They had anticipated me. They had studied my movements, my weaknesses, my trust in the house, in the people around me. "Carter," I whispered, my mind racing. Where was he when I needed him? Every ally, every friend I thought I could count on seemed to vanish when the moment mattered most. The betrayal didn't just sting. It dug in, burrowing deep into the cracks Adrian had left in my world. Marcus stepped forward, the floorboards groaning under his weight. "You were clever to come here," he said slowly. "But not clever enough. You see, this farm isn't just a gift. It's a puzzle.
A test.
And you," his gaze swept over me, calculating, cold. "You failed it." I felt heat rise in my ears, my hands shaking so violently I had to press them against the dresser for support.
I
did everything right," I stammered. "I followed the letters, the notebook, the USB, everything Adrian left me." Stephen chuckled softly, but it wasn't friendly. It was deliberate, cutting. "Adrian was clever. Too clever. And you're too trusting. That's why it's easy to manipulate you." Betrayal. The word rolled in my mind, tasting metallic and bitter. Not from Adrian, he had left clues, guidance, warnings. But from them. From the men who shared blood with him. From the ones I'd assumed would understand his love for me, his intention for this place. They had turned it all into a trap. I backed toward the window, hands brushing against the curtains, hoping to escape. But there was no way out. Their presence filled the hallway, pressing in, like shadows made physical. The storm outside mirrored the one inside me. Wind rattled the window panes, making the glass shiver. Rain pelted the roof in sharp, irregular bursts, each sound a drumbeat of the danger pressing down on me. And then, a quiet voice from the doorway made me flinch. Elena breathed. Maya. She had arrived silently, the only one I could trust in that moment. Her eyes were wide, but steady. She stayed behind me, ready. "Don't let them see you panic," she whispered. "You can't give them that satisfaction." I swallowed hard, nodding, even as the tremor in my legs refused to subside. I can't believe Adrian trusted them," I whispered, almost to myself. Maya shook her head. "It's not about Adrian trusting them. It's about you. They want you to crumble. They want to see fear take over." I clenched my fists, nails biting into my palms. The betrayal stung, yes, but beneath the raw, furious ache was a seed, an ember I hadn't realized was still alive inside me. Their cunning, their cruelty, their manipulation, they had underestimated one thing.
Me.
Adrian's trust in me had not been misplaced. Not entirely. "I won't let them win," I said, voice firmer now, almost to convince myself as much as anyone else. Marcus's smirk faltered slightly. Stephen's calm gaze wavered for a fraction of a second, just enough to notice. But their cunning hadn't been fully revealed yet. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I would need to be smarter.
Faster.
More careful. Every mistake I had made so far had led me here, to this confrontation, to the sharp edge of fear. And yet, in that moment of betrayal, I realized something else. My strength wasn't in avoiding failure. It was in rising after it. Maya's hand found mine, warm and steady. "You'll figure it out," she said. Her faith was quiet, but fierce, like a torch in the darkness. I nodded, taking a deep, shuddering breath. The house felt heavier now, as if it too understood the threat lingering in every corner. But it also felt alive, the way Adrian had left it for me. Every clue, every hidden message, every subtle warning, it was all a foundation. And I would use it, even if it broke me in the process. Because the next time they thought I would fail, they wouldn't see what was coming. The storm outside raged harder, wind and rain slashing against the windows like a warning. But inside me, beneath the panic, the betrayal, the fear, there was a fire. And it was just beginning to burn. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick with that wet, earthy smell that always clung to the farm after a storm. I stood at the edge of the porch, watching the mist curl along the fields, feeling the damp chill seep through the wool sweater I had pulled tightly around myself. The house behind me was quiet now, almost reverent, as if it too had survived the night's chaos and was taking stock of what had been lost, and what could be reclaimed. I let myself lean against the railing, closing my eyes, letting the sounds of dripping leaves and distant crow calls fill the spaces inside me that had been hollowed out by fear. For the first time in days, I let myself remember Adrian, Not the frantic, panicked figure on the USB video, not the careful instructions left in his notebook, but him as he had been, whole, patient, and impossibly alive. I remembered the mornings when he would insist on making tea exactly the way I liked it, even though I often teased him for being so precise. His laugh, low and infectious, would fill the kitchen when he spilled flour on the counter or misjudged the kettle's timing. I remembered the smell of the earth when he dragged me to his secret garden behind the barn, insisting we plant tulips and daffodils even though he had no time. And I remembered the warmth in his eyes when he'd glance at me across the room, like the world had shrunk to just us. Those memories were painful now, stabbing reminders of what I had almost lost to fear, to betrayal, to inaction. But they were also the fuel I needed to move forward. If Adrian had believed in me enough to leave these puzzles, these hidden truths, then I had to believe in myself. I pressed my palms to my temples, feeling the pulse of anxiety still throb there. But beneath it, beneath the tremor of exhaustion, I felt a new clarity. The failures of the last night, the broken trust, the stolen notebook, the sense that I was exposed and helpless, had taught me something vital. Fear was only powerful if I let it be. If I acted from it, I would flinch. But if I let it sharpen me, focus me, it could become a tool. Maya's words from yesterday came back to me, precise and unyielding. Don't let them see you panic. That wasn't just a survival tactic, it was a promise to myself. I would not be manipulated. Not anymore. I wandered through the house, my footsteps quiet on the creaking wood, touching surfaces that had once been familiar. Each room carried echoes of Adrian, of laughter, of arguments we'd had, of silences that weren't empty but full of understanding. In the corner of the living room, I found the old piano he used to play. Dust lay thick on the keys, but the sound was alive when I pressed down, soft, hesitant, but capable of resonance. I let my fingers wander across it, and a melody from years ago surfaced, a tune we had hummed together on quiet Sunday mornings. It was a reminder that life, our life, had roots deeper than fear, deeper than any threat. As I closed the piano, my gaze fell on the notebook. The pages, crumpled from the earlier intrusion, seemed less threatening now, less like a puzzle designed to mock me. I traced my finger along Adrian's scrawled handwriting, remembering the late nights he spent with papers spread across the desk, muttering to himself, trying to solve problems I hadn't fully understood. And suddenly it struck me, the key he had hidden, the videos, the warnings, they were not just instructions. They were trust, a belief that I could do what he could not, that I could continue what he had begun, even when everything seemed to crumble around me. Maya's voice broke my reverie. "Elena, you've been quiet." She was standing at the doorway, rain droplets clinging to the edges of her coat, eyes soft but insistent. I smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at my features. "I've been thinking," I said, "about him, about everything, and about me." She nodded slowly, sensing the shift in me. And I won't let fear dictate what happens next," I said. "I have to figure out the key, find the hidden files, and anticipate Marcus and Steven's moves before they even make them. I've been reactive for too long. It's time to be proactive." Maya's eyes sparkled with relief and approval. "That's the Elena I know." I nodded, feeling a calm determination settle over me like armor. My mind ran through possibilities. The hidden key Adrian had mentioned, the files that could expose the truth, the way the Harrow brothers had always underestimated my resolve. Each obstacle felt less like a brick wall and more like a series of puzzles waiting for the right approach. I remembered the first night I stepped onto this farm, overwhelmed by grief and confusion, and compared it to now. The farm no longer felt like a maze designed to trap me. It was a stage, a landscape where I could reclaim control, piece by piece. Every creaking floorboard, every shadowed corner, every locked door was a challenge, and I was no longer afraid. Later, in the kitchen, I brewed a cup of tea, inhaling the faintly burnt aroma Adrian always loved and shaking my head at the memory of him insisting it was perfect. I took a sip, letting the warmth spread through me, grounding me in the present. I thought about the confrontation ahead. Marcus and Stephen would come again. They would test my patience, my resolve, my trust in myself. But now I had a strategy. I had patience honed by fear and sharpened by betrayal. And I had Maya. I had Adrian's guidance, hidden in plain sight. And most importantly, I had my own strength, newly realized, simmering beneath the surface. I walked back to the desk where the laptop sat silently. The USB drive lay next to it, a small rectangle holding the potential to unravel everything or save it. I traced my finger along its edge and whispered, "This is for you, Adrian. I won't let it go to waste." The wind outside picked up again, rustling the trees, rattling the windows. It sounded like the world was warning me, or maybe it was cheering me on. I couldn't tell the difference. I opened the laptop, ready to map out the next steps, every thought focused, every nerve alert. The storm was far from over. The Harrow brothers were relentless, but so was I. And this time, when the confrontation came, I would meet it not with fear, but with strategy, clarity, and the quiet confidence of someone who had finally embraced her own strength. For the first time since Adrian's death, I felt the future stretching out before me. Not threatening, not impossible, but mine to claim. And I was ready. The morning sun barely broke through the heavy clouds, casting the farm in a muted gray light. I could feel the chill in the air, but it no longer seeped into my bones. It felt like a reminder, a sharpening edge, a warning that today I had to move. The failures of the past nights, the betrayal, the fear, they were behind me now. What mattered was the next step. The step I had avoided for too long. I gathered the notebook, the USB, and the little flash drive Adrian had hidden in the drawer. Each item felt heavier in my hands than it had before, burdened with the weight of secrets, but also charged with possibility. Today, I would turn all that weight into action. Maya was already waiting in the kitchen, her expression tight with anticipation. She had been silent this morning, the kind of quiet that spoke louder than words. I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes, her mind already calculating the risks, the contingencies, the way forward. She didn't speak first. She waited for me. "Are you ready?" she asked finally, her voice low but steady. I met her gaze, drawing strength from the trust in her eyes. "I have to be," I said. "I've been hiding, reacting, hoping someone else would make sense of Adrian's plans. But this is mine. And I will not let them outmaneuver me again." She nodded, and for a moment, the room felt like a fortress. Not the walls or the locks or the hidden cameras, but the understanding that we were aligned, that we were a unit, that we were prepared. I spread the notebook open on the table, tracing the entries Adrian had left behind. Every page was a puzzle, every scribble a clue to what Marcus and Stephen were after. My mind moved through them with a precision I hadn't possessed before, connecting dots, noting patterns, marking weak points. "They're predictable," I murmured to Maya. "They rely on fear. They think they can force decisions. But every move they make, I can anticipate it now." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you really think you can outsmart them?" I didn't answer immediately. I ran my fingers along the edge of the USB drive. It's not about outsmarting. It's about preparation, patience, and knowing the ground you're standing on. Adrian left me all I need. I just have to follow it and trust myself. Her lips curved slightly, the first real smile I'd seen from her in days. "Then we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the more time they have to interfere, to cover their tracks." I nodded, already visualizing the steps ahead. First, the files on the USB had to be decrypted. Then the key, hidden somewhere on the property, had to be located. Every lock, every trap, every hidden corner of the farm suddenly had a purpose. I felt a thrill of control, the kind I hadn't felt since Adrian had been alive. As I packed the laptop into my bag, I paused, feeling the weight of the moment. "Maya, if we do this, there's no turning back. They won't stop. They'll escalate. Are you ready?" Her gaze was unwavering. I've never been more ready. I drew in a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs, feeling the damp scent of the fields, the faint scent of the house still clinging to the air, the smell of brewing determination. It grounded me, reminding me that the farm was ours, not theirs. That every secret Adrian had left behind, every hidden plan, was designed not just to protect the past, but to safeguard the future. I looked around the room, imagining Marcus and Stephen prowling somewhere out there, thinking they were ahead, thinking they had me cornered. A quiet smirk crossed my face. They had underestimated me. They had misjudged the resolve Adrian had nurtured in me, the lessons he had quietly built into every corner of this place. We moved together through the house, checking doors, revisiting hiding spots, ensuring nothing had been overlooked. Every creak, every shadow, every flicker of light became part of our mental map. The tension was thick, almost tactile, but I welcomed it. This was no longer fear, it was focus. By midday, we had everything ready. The decrypted files laid out, a strategy mapped, contingencies noted for every possible interference. I sat back, running a hand through my hair, feeling the strength that had been growing silently over these weeks. They don't know what's coming, I murmured. And they will regret it. Maya placed a hand on my shoulder. Elena, remember, this isn't just about revenge or proving them wrong. This is about finishing what Adrian started. About taking control of what belongs to you, to us. I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle deep inside. Everything I had endured, the fear, the betrayal, the loss, had led to this. Every lesson Adrian had left me, every hidden clue, every memory of him laughing in the garden or humming over the piano, it was all part of my armor. And when Marcus and Stephen made their next move, I would be ready. Not with anger, not with panic, but with clarity, strategy, and the resolve of someone who had finally embraced her own strength. The sun broke through the clouds at last, illuminating the farm in a soft, golden light. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and possibility. It was a small, quiet victory, but one that mattered. I closed the laptop, slinging my bag over my shoulder, and glanced at Maya. Let's begin. And with that, we stepped forward, toward the confrontation we had been preparing for, knowing that every choice we made today would shape not just the outcome of the battle, but the legacy Adrian had entrusted to me. The storm wasn't over. But this time, I was ready to face it head-on. The front door slammed behind us, echoing through the farmhouse like a gunshot. I felt it in my chest, a pulse of adrenaline that made my hands tingle and my stomach coil. Outside, the late afternoon sky had darkened, clouds curling low over the fields, their shadows crawling across the barn and fences like silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. Marcus and Stephen were waiting, just beyond the threshold, their expressions carefully measured, a mixture of arrogance and anticipation. The way they stood, broad, unyielding, made it clear they thought they owned every inch of this property, every secret, every decision. But they had misjudged me. They had miscalculated. Elena, Marcus said, his voice smooth but laced with something sharper, venomous. I wonder how long it would take before you finally stepped into the lion's den. Stephen's gaze flicked over the bags we carried, the laptop, the documents I had painstakingly prepared. You've been busy, he said, almost admiringly, but there was an edge to it, a warning. But all that work won't matter. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and outmatched. I planted my feet firmly, feeling the rough wood of the porch beneath me. My palms were steady now, no tremor, no doubt, just focus. Maybe I said, my voice low but steady. But you forgot one thing. You underestimated me. Stephen laughed softly, a sound meant to belittle, but it only fueled the fire coiling in my chest. Underestimated? You've barely survived until now. This farm is mine. Every asset, every secret, all yours to admire, not to claim. I shook my head, letting the wind whip through my hair, cold and bracing. This farm was never yours. It was never Marcus. It was never Stephen. It was Adrian's. And he trusted me to see it through, to protect it, to uncover the truth hidden in every corner. The words hit harder than I expected, and I could see a flicker of unease cross Marcus's eyes. But only for a second. Stephen's lips curled into a snarl. Then show us. Show us what you've learned. Show us how clever you are. I met their gaze, letting my calm radiate outward. It's not cleverness you fear. It's exposure. You've spent your lives hiding, twisting truths, manipulating family, and now the truth is coming for you. Maya stepped beside me, silent but solid, her presence grounding me. She didn't speak, but the unspoken agreement passed between us. This was our line. This was where we drew the boundary. Marcus's hand twitched toward the doorframe, a subtle threat, but I was faster. Don't, I said, voice low, but dangerous. My heart was hammering now, adrenaline coursing through me, but I held my ground. One step closer, and you'll see exactly how prepared I am. The tension was thick, almost visible, coiling around the three of us like smoke. The storm outside mirrored it perfectly. Clouds dark, wind whipping the trees, leaves swirling across the yard. Every sound, the flap of a sign in the distance, the creak of a fence post, the rustle of rain from earlier, was amplified, each one a heartbeat, a warning. Stephen took a slow step forward. "You're bluffing," he said. But there was a tightness in his jaw that betrayed him. I let myself smile. Faint, calm. No bluff. I've spent weeks preparing. Every trap, every plan, every piece of evidence Adrian left, it's all here. And you won't stop me. Marcus's hand clenched into a fist. You think this is over? You think a little planning changes what's coming? I stepped forward, the wooden boards creaking beneath my weight, feeling the farm beneath my feet like a foundation stronger than fear. It does. Because I know your weaknesses. I know how you operate. And I know the truth. Stephen's sneer faltered for a moment. The truth, he spat, like it was a foreign concept. You mean the lies Adrian left you to follow? The distractions? I shook my head. Not lies. Guidance. Insight. You built your walls with deception and intimidation, but you forgot that someone else could see through them. The wind picked up, rattling the windows and the shutters behind us. I could see Marcus glance at Stephen, uncertainty flashing across his features. And in that brief pause, I felt the tide turn. Now, I said, voice calm but commanding, you can leave. Walk away with what you think is yours. Or you can stay and face everything you've tried to hide. But know this, once the files are released, the evidence is undeniable. You've underestimated me, and Adrian's trust in me will be proven right. Maya's hand squeezed mine, small but resolute. Her presence reminded me of how far I'd come, how far we'd come together. I had moved from fear to preparation, from doubt to determination. And now I was ready to finish what had begun. Stephen's face twisted in anger. Marcus's jaw tightened, but I didn't flinch. The farm, the house, the air, the very soil beneath our feet, they were ours to protect. And I was done hiding. The silence stretched, heavy, threatening to break, as the storm outside rumbled faintly, a distant reminder of the chaos that could erupt. Every heartbeat felt loud, deliberate, the calm before the storm that would decide everything. And in that suspended moment, I realized nothing about this confrontation was about fear anymore. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, about honoring Adrian's legacy, about proving, finally, that I was more than a survivor. I was a force to be reckoned with. The air shimmered with tension, every shadow a possibility, every movement a potential threat. But I stood firm, every nerve alive, every thought focused. The final act had begun, and this time I would not let them win. The room was tense, almost vibrating with the energy of unspoken threats and held breaths. Marcus and Stephen had stepped inside, thinking the battle was theirs to control. But I could feel the shift in the air, subtle at first, like the way the wind changes direction before a storm breaks. Every plan I had laid, every precaution Adrian had left, every ounce of resolve I had cultivated, they were all converging now. I hope you understand the gravity of what you're facing, I said, voice calm but carrying the weight of certainty. Every lie, every deception, every manipulation, it's all accounted for. Marcus sneered, but there was hesitation in his eyes. You're bluffing, he spat. No bluff, I replied, lifting the laptop to show the decrypted files, documents meticulously organized, every financial record, every letter, every hidden transaction. Everything you've tried to hide, everything you thought was untouchable is here. And you can't spin it away this time. Stephen's face twisted with disbelief and anger. How did you even? I let the words hang in the air, letting the weight of months of preparation settle around us like a cage. I listened. I observed. I learned. And I refused to be afraid anymore. Adrian trusted me to finish what he started, and I intend to honor that trust. Maya stepped forward beside me, her presence a silent reinforcement of our unity. You underestimated her, she said firmly. And that's your mistake. The two of them glanced at each other, realizing for the first time that the game had shifted. Their usual confidence, their air of untouchable dominance, was cracking under the weight of evidence and resolve. You can't just take the farm, Marcus said finally, voice strained. It's mine, I interrupted, firm, unwavering. Not because of greed, not because of inheritance, but because it was always meant to be protected, to nurture, to be a sanctuary. Adrian built this, prepared it, left it for me, and I will not let it fall into your hands. Stephen's eyes narrowed, but I saw the first cracks of surrender in his posture. He realized the leverage they had relied on, the threats, the intimidation, the assumption that fear would control me, was gone. It had been replaced with something they could not predict. Conviction. I opened the files on the laptop, showing the evidence of their past manipulations, their attempts to claim what was never theirs. Every fraudulent document, every falsified signature, every whisper of deceit, it was all laid bare. You see, I said, letting the words flow with quiet satisfaction. This is why Adrian left it for me. To expose the truth, to protect what's right. And you're outmatched by honesty, by preparation, and by integrity. The room fell silent. Even the storm outside seemed to pause, as though waiting for the outcome. Marcus's shoulders slumped, a fleeting look of frustration and defeat crossing his face. Stephen remained rigid, but there was an unmistakable resignation in his eyes. They could argue, they could deny, but the evidence, the strategy, the moral high ground, it was undeniable. Maya reached for my hand, a small squeeze, grounding me in the moment. You've done it, she whispered. I let out a slow breath, feeling the tension drain from my body. We've done it, I corrected, because every step, every plan, every ounce of courage had been shared, and it mattered. For the first time in weeks, I felt a clarity that transcended fear and grief. I realized how far I had come, from the woman who had hesitated, who had been overwhelmed by loss, who had been manipulated into doubt, to someone capable, decisive, and unyielding. Adrian's faith in me had sparked something I didn't fully see in myself until this moment. Resilience. Strength. The power to reclaim what mattered. Marcus finally muttered, almost quietly, "This isn't over." I shook my head, voice calm, confident, unshakable. "It is over. For you, for your games, for your manipulation. But for me, for this farm, for this legacy, it's just beginning." They turned, finally, and left the farmhouse, their footsteps heavy but distant, fading into the mist and shadows. The storm outside broke then, rain lashing against the windows, thunder rolling across the fields, but inside, the farmhouse felt warm, safe, and alive. I sank into the chair by the desk, feeling the weight of the past week's lift, replaced by a lightness that was almost shocking. Maya sat beside me, the silence between us comfortable, filled with understanding and triumph. I opened the laptop again, scrolling through the files one last time, each document a testament to careful planning, to the foresight Adrian had left me, to the victories earned through patience and courage. "Adrian," I whispered, voice trembling slightly, "we did it. Your farm, your legacy, it's safe. And I promise I will honor it. I will make sure your dreams, our dreams, continue." Maya nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. "And you will, Elena. You've proven it. Not just to them, but to yourself." I allowed myself a small smile, feeling the catharsis of justice, the release of fear, the quiet pride of survival and triumph. The farmhouse was ours, the truth was ours, and for the first time, I saw a future filled not with shadows of loss, but with light, possibility, and agency. The sun broke through the clouds at last, golden light spilling across the fields, illuminating the farmhouse and the paths we had reclaimed. It felt like a blessing, a signal that the storm, both outside and within me, had passed. I looked at Maya, and then around the house, breathing in the scent of rain-soaked earth, wood, and hope. "It's time to move forward," I said softly. "Not just survive, but live, build,
Protect.
honor." And for the first time since Adrian had passed, I believed it. Not just the promise of the farm, or the inheritance of a legacy, but the promise of myself, my strength, and the life I was ready to embrace. The confrontation had ended. The future had begun. The morning after the confrontation felt surreal, as if the farm itself had exhaled a long-held breath. The air was crisp and fragrant with dew, the sunlight spilling gently across the fields, catching in the rippling grass like liquid gold. For the first time in weeks, I could move through the rooms without the tension of unseen threats pressing down on me. The farmhouse, once a place of secrets and fear, now felt alive with possibility. Maya moved quietly beside me, unpacking supplies and checking locks, but there was a lightness in her step, a soft hum of satisfaction in her voice. "You know," she said, pausing at the doorway to the living room, "the farm's never really been about land or money. It's about this, moments like these, where control, trust, and courage matter more than anything else." I nodded, letting my gaze drift toward the window, where the fields stretched endlessly. Adrian had built more than structures, more than gardens and barns. He had built a sanctuary. And now, finally, I understood my role, not just as a caretaker of the property, but as a guardian of the legacy, of the ideals he had cherished. Jenna arrived later that afternoon, hesitant at first, her expression a mixture of curiosity, concern, and lingering tension from her time under Marcus and Stephen's influence. I could feel the unease radiating from her, and I knew this reconciliation wouldn't be immediate. But as she stepped inside, Maya gently guided her toward me, and I opened my arms. "It's okay," I said softly, letting the words carry more than reassurance. They carried trust, acceptance, and the quiet strength of someone who had faced loss and fear and emerged whole. "Everything that happened, it's over now. We're safe. And this," I gestured toward the farmhouse and the fields beyond, "is ours. All of ours." Jenna hesitated, then let herself relax slightly, allowing the first flickers of understanding to appear in her eyes. I want to help," she said finally, voice trembling, "with the farm and with you." I smiled, a warmth spreading through me that I hadn't realized I'd been holding back. "Then let's do it together," I said. "This isn't just about me or Adrian. It's about us, about family, and about building something that lasts." The rest of the afternoon passed in a quiet rhythm, unpacking, organizing, and reclaiming spaces that had once been battlegrounds of fear and doubt. Each room we touched, each corner we cleared, felt like a small victory, a tangible reminder that the past no longer had power over us. Maya finally paused, leaning against the kitchen counter with a small cup of tea in hand. "Elena," she said carefully, "you've changed. I see it. You're not the same woman who first stepped onto this farm. You're stronger, sharper, more alive." I nodded, sipping the tea, letting the warmth fill me. "I've had to be," I admitted. "Loss and betrayal teach you that. But more than that, I've learned to trust myself." Adrian's faith in me, even in the quietest ways, made me see that I can face anything. As evening fell, we gathered on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. The farm was quiet now, peaceful, the weight of the past finally lifted. And in that stillness, I could feel the culmination of all that had happened, the confrontations, the betrayals, the strategies, the victories, settling into a profound sense of closure. Jenna leaned her head against my shoulder, and Maya's hand found mine. "It feels right," Jenna murmured, her voice soft but certain. I smiled, feeling tears prick my eyes. "It is right," I said. "And it will keep getting right, as long as we protect it, nurture it, and honor it, not just the land, but the legacy, the memories, and the love that built it." Later, alone in the quiet of the farmhouse, I wandered through the rooms that had once been shadows of fear. Every creak of the floor, every beam of light through the windows, felt like affirmation. I touched the piano, running my fingers across the keys, and a melody rose, soft and hesitant at first, then strong, full of life and hope. It was a tune I had hummed with Adrian, a reminder that the past and present could coexist, pain transformed into strength, loss transformed into purpose. The night settled in, but the darkness was no longer threatening. It was comforting, protective, a blanket under which dreams could take root. I stood at the window, looking out over the fields, and felt the weight of everything lift. The Harrow brothers' shadows, the betrayals, the fear, they were gone. What remained was the future, waiting to be claimed, nurtured, and lived fully. I whispered into the quiet, almost as if Adrian could hear me. "We did it. You trusted me, and I won't let it go. I'll keep the farm, your dreams, and our future alive." And for the first time in a long while, I felt complete, not just because the conflict was over, but because I had discovered something deeper: the strength to face loss, the courage to confront betrayal, and the resilience to embrace life fully, no matter the storms that might come. The farmhouse glowed softly in the moonlight, the fields stretched endlessly beyond, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. Not of fear, not of struggle, but of life, hope, and the legacy we would build together. The storm had passed. The future was ours. The first flowers bloomed earlier than expected that spring, tiny bursts of yellow and white that dotted the fields like quiet promises. I stood on the porch, breathing in the crisp morning air, letting the faint sweetness of the blossoms settle into me. The farm felt different now. Not just safer, but alive. Reclaimed. Not Adrian's alone, not mine alone, but something new, something built from everything we had endured and everything still ahead. Jenna walked across the yard carrying a small potted plant, her boots kicking up soft dust. "I thought this should go near the garden," she said, holding it up shyly. "You know, to start our own section." I smiled, taking the pot from her hands. "A beginning," I said softly. She nodded, and for the first time since everything happened, her smile reached her eyes. Inside, Maya was already reorganizing the study. Her voice echoed down the hallway, firm but warm. "Elena, if you don't put labels on these drawers, I swear I'm making my own system." I laughed, shaking my head. "You probably should. My system is chaos." "Controlled chaos," Maya corrected, flashing me a grin. "Just like you." And she was right. I had become a little chaos, a little order, a little fear, a lot of courage. A woman shaped not by what tried to break her, but by everything she chose to stand up for. The documents Adrian left me were secured now. No more secrets, no more shadows. Lawyers had closed the case on the Harrow brothers, and they were finally facing the consequences they had run from for years. The threat that once hung over this land like a storm cloud had dissolved. Justice didn't come loudly, but steadily, like rain soaking into soil, making it fertile again. I stepped out toward the garden behind the barn, the place Adrian had loved most. The fence had been repaired, the soil turned over, new seeds planted. Maya had insisted on roses. Jenna planted wildflowers. I planted tulips, his favorite and mine. Kneeling by the soil, I placed the small plant Jenna gave me into the earth. My hands worked gently, instinctively, smoothing the dirt around it. The sun warmed my back, and the world felt quiet and full, as if holding its breath for what would come next. As I stood, brushing dirt from my palms, memories rose, of fear, of shaking hands, of nights spent wondering if I would survive the weight of grief and danger. But standing there now, in the stillness, I understood something I hadn't before. Those moments had not defined me. What defined me was what came after. The choices I made when everything hurt. The strength I found when the world looked dark. The refusal to let anyone, fear, betrayal, or blood, decide my future for me. Later, as the sun began to set, I joined Maya and Jenna on the porch. We sat together, wrapped in blankets, watching the sky shift from pink to violet to deep, calming blue. Fireflies began to glow near the grass, blinking like tiny lanterns lighting the edges of our newfound peace. Jenna leaned her head on my shoulder. "Mom," she said quietly, "I didn't realize until recently you're the strongest woman I know." Emotion tightened my throat, but I reached for her hand. "Strength doesn't always roar," I murmured. "Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it's just the decision to get up again." Maya nodded softly. "And sometimes it's standing your ground when the whole world expects you to fall apart." We watched the last light fade. And in that peaceful, sacred moment, I thought of Adrian. Not with pain anymore, but with gratitude. He had trusted me with this land, with this legacy, but more importantly, he had trusted me with myself. He believed I would find my way long before I ever believed it. And I had. I stood, taking one last look at the horizon, a wide, endless expanse, glowing with possibility, and I whispered a promise I knew he would hear, wherever he was. "I won't let fear write my story. Not anymore." As the wind brushed gently across the fields, as if answering me, I felt the truth settle deep inside. I had been tested. I had been shaken. But I had risen. Not because I was unbreakable, but because even in breaking, I learned how to rebuild. And now, standing on this land, surrounded by my daughter, by a friend who had become family, by a future finally unchained from the past, I knew this was my legacy. Strength that survives storms. Love that outlives loss. A woman who chooses her own path, no matter who tries to stand in her way. And to anyone listening, to anyone watching, to anyone standing at the edge of their own fear, your story isn't over. You are stronger than the worst thing that ever happened to you. And the life you're meant for? It's still ahead, waiting for the moment you decide to claim it. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Voice of Jenna so you never miss the next chapter in our world of twists, lessons, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world to me, and trust me, the stories only get better from here.